Emma, thank you so much for helping us out with this. We're really, really grateful. I wondered as we get started, if you could just sort of us to introduce yourself to us, just let us know your sort of name and role.
So I'm Emma Bonnin, and I am head teacher at Pakeman Primary School in Holloway, which is in North London.
And could you just give me a bit of an idea of sort of, where Pakeman is? What does Holloway look like for your kids? Like, where is the school situated? Like, paint us a picture of what school is like.
So we are in a very disadvantaged area of London. Just to give you a bit of an indication, our deprivation factor is just over double national average. We are in Islington. Islington is a very mixed borough, but we're in the part of Islington that is very disadvantaged. The only big businesses around us are the Arsenal Stadium and the prison. So you can see the gap in between those two in the first place, and that kind of represents the gap in Islington between children like ours in disadvantaged schools and children in areas of Islington that are kind of more middle class. Our percentage of pupil premium, which is a qualifier for disadvantage from the DFE, is 53%. That is also more than double national, but it doesn't include, that 53% doesn't include our refugee families or our families that are really trying to get back into work and are on 0 hours contract. So our disadvantage percentage is more like 75, even though according to the DFE criteria it isn't.
Thank you, that's really helpful. And just in terms of like the immediate area around the school, so you said just sort of, between the stadium and the prison, what does the sort of street look like? What is that area like for young people when they're coming to school?
I mean, the best way to describe our area is it's a concrete jungle with a lot of high-rise buildings. I think we have 3 trees in our playground, and there is no greenery and no nature around us. In terms of what our children are kind of faced with on a day-to-day, you were talking about on their way to school, there are lots and lots of challenges. The mobility in our school is really high, so there's no kind of stability in where our children are living. The housing situation is really poor, and they have to kind of choose between, I live in a small studio flat with my 5 siblings and my mum and dad and my nan and granddad, or I move out of London and I lose everything that is my stability, which is school and my neighbourhood. So it's a really difficult situation right from the start. Poverty is a real thing for our families. We run a food bank at school. Our families don't have enough money to eat. So everything kind of comes after that. If you can't eat and you're not safe, then everything is difficult. Mental health is an issue with a lot of our families, drug and alcohol abuse. We're in the main area for gang recruitment for county lines. So the 2 estates where our children live are where most of the recruiting of Somali boys happens. They recruit from the age of about 8, so they are literally waiting outside school. Because our parents have so many other things to think about, parental engagement at school is not the greatest in terms of academic. There's lots of reasons. Mental health is one of them, but also like 69% of our children don't speak English as a first language. And that is not just one language. At the moment, it's 35 different languages. So it's very difficult to reach our parents. They believe in us and they know that Pakeman is a safe space, but it's really difficult to kind of go beyond that.
Thank you. And on the video, we've got some amazing testimonials from some of young people about the impact of Outward Bound, without sort of being specific. And you've just touched on some of the unbelievable challenges your young people face. But in terms of some of those young people in the video, what's going on for some of those people, young people?
So some of the examples that I've given you are examples of the lives of the young children. Obviously, I can't tell you which one does what, but if Outward Bound gives you an opportunity to kind of get out of that. So there are lots of reasons why we choose Outward Bound, and I've been in the school that I'm at for 20 years, and I've been on a lot of residentials, but none of them compare to Outward Bound. Outward Bound is done in a way, first and foremost, it gives our children an opportunity to get away from home. And that, in terms of safety, is hugely important. It tells them and it shows them that there's a chance, there's life outside Holloway. Holloway isn't, our children live in London, but they've never seen the River Thames. We have to take them there for them to see it. It's also, for our children and the challenges that they face, it's a week, and this might sound a bit cliche, but it's a week where they can just focus on smiling and joy and happiness, because they don't need to be young carer to anyone. They don't need to worry about anybody else. It's just an opportunity for them to grow a different kind of emotion. It doesn't have to be resilience. It doesn't have to be fear. It doesn't have to be pretending that you're okay. It is literally just joy. And you can see that in the faces of the children on the video when they speak. You can see that in the pictures of a child standing at the bottom of a waterfall with their mouth wide open. Now, when are our children ever going to get to do this if they don't come to Outward Bound? It's also a really good model of teamwork. It's a reminder that you don't need to always do things by yourself, and that it's good and it's helpful and it's supportive to do it with other people. And we've always said that's a strength of the instructors at Outward Bound, and they model that beautifully. They work together with us as a team, but they also model it between them as instructors, and they help each other and they support each other. And if you need two people to do an activity, then you can see the teamwork between them, and that our children mirror that because they've seen it as a model. It's a challenge, and we have tears, but they are tears of resilience and tears of trying and tears of joy. They know it's a challenge, but they get a reward at the end. That they get this sense of achievement that you can't get from anywhere else. They face their fears and they go jumping off cliffs or walking up waterfalls, and they come back stronger in terms of emotional regulation. Their resilience. I think our children they come into school in Holloway and they have a certain amount of academic resilience, but having resilience in day-to-day life is something that they have run out of, that they're running on empty. Whereas when you come to Outward Bound and you face your fears in a completely different environment, their resilience builds up again. So, you can tell from what I'm saying that Outward Bound is life-changing for our children. It's a way of developing their aspirations. For our children, it's their first time on a boat. It's their first time making a campfire. It's their first time seeing so much water in a lake. It's the first time touching a bug or eating a berry off a bush, or it's their first time for so many things. Sorry, I've kind of blabbered on and I'm not answering your question, but
no, it's perfect. It's absolutely amazing. I think what you've said there sort of captures the reason you come to Outward Bound, what it offers your young people, and even sort of touched on the impact of it.
It changes our children's life. It shows them that there's so much more potential out there for them. That, and it's done in such a safe and secure environment that they learn from it and they realize that, you know what, my aspirations don't have to be that I'm going to work in the local area and stay in the local area for the rest of my life and also live in a small studio with my family where 5 of us are sleeping in a double bed. Like, it shows them that, I mean, the joy of having a bed to yourself when they first get there is the first party, because they don't normally get that.
And in terms of some of the longer term impacts, in your experience when kids have been on one of our programs, what have you sort of seen when they get back to school in their sort of usual environment?
So they apply all of those things that I spoke about earlier in school. So the teamwork they bring back to school, and they use the fact that you don't have to get on with your schoolwork by yourself. You can ask for support and it's okay to ask for help. And it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means that you're really good at working as a team. They take back that resilience that they've developed, that they develop resilience on school residential that isn't academic resilience, but it's transferable. And those transferable skills are obvious. And that's why we do our residential in September, so that they can apply that then all year long. Because if we did it in the summer, over the 6 weeks of the summer, they would lose it. And then it also, the key thing for our children day to day is that every day you're in school, you work towards a target and you work towards going to secondary school and building a future. And we talk about that a lot in school. But if you are a child who has never been out of the local area that we are in, you don't have the same aims and you're not working towards the same thing. If our children think that they can become an outward bound instructor in the Lake District, then that's going to be a different kind of motivation when you're doing science and when you're doing geography, because you've been there and you've seen it. And if you explain to them that they're also going to need those speaking skills and that language to be able to give instructions to other people, then that gives them a different kind of motivation when they're doing their literacy work. So all of those skills, even though they're not obviously transferable, they really are when you bring the children back to the concrete jungle that we live in.
Thank you so much. Just one more question, sort of general, before I ask like my final question. So it's just sort of, obviously our programs happen in the really wild outdoors, surrounded by nature. So specifically linked to this opportunity, how is sort of the young people's experience of being immersed in that nature, which is so different to the concrete jungle of Holloway? How do they respond to that?
I think they spend the first kind of hour being absolutely gobsmacked and surprised and overwhelmed, probably a little bit, because it is so different to where we are. And there's no high-rise buildings, there's not cars everywhere or red buses on the corner of every street. And so I think step one is quite overwhelming for a lot of them. And then suddenly it's that sense of freedom. It's okay to roll down a mountain, as long as there's no rocks around. It's okay to run up to a sheep, because you've never seen one up that close. It's okay to take your shoes off and put your feet in water. And that enormous sense of freedom is not only good for their mental health, but it's also generally just good for their health. And even if 10 out of those 40 kids go home every year and say to their mum and dad, you go back there, it's not only good for them, but it then has a ricochet effect that it's good for their parents and it's good for the rest of their family. And it opens up doors that our children would probably never have had if we didn't take them.
Amazing, thank you. And then finally, obviously you've heard about this opportunity. We hopefully have at the RHS Chelsea Flower Show in 2026. What do you think about that opportunity? Obviously, it would be incredible for Outward Bound, but I mean more if we were able to, if we were lucky enough to have this opportunity, we would want to involve your young people and bring them to the show. And then the second part of that is that we would take the garden to Abu Dhabi. So, from your point of view, how do you think your kids might respond to one coming to the flower show and sort of seeing an outward bound garden in situ and that whole experience? And then if we did have a sort of then take the garden back to Abu Dhabi and they had that opportunity going forward, what do you think about that?
I mean, first and foremost, I think it's really exciting. I think our children would. I mean, our children have never been to Chelsea. I don't think most of our staff have been to Chelsea, and for them to come and join a lot of people who have probably never been to Holloway, and be exposed to an environment where normally we take London to Outward Bound, and this is kind of the reverse of Outward Bound is coming to London. And Outward Bound is going to be there in this show where everybody's going to see it. And our children have been there. And for them, that showing the world and the London around them that they've been to that place outside of there, and someone who's used and developed their creativity to bring it into London is a huge lesson in itself, let alone it being an opportunity for our children to come to the Chelsea Flower Show and see people that they've never met before and have the opportunity to talk about, this is what I saw, and in this bundle of creativity in this garden, I can see this bit that I saw in Outward Bound, and I can see this thing that I did in Outward Bound. And it's just showing our children that there's a much broader world out there than just a one-off, we're going to go to Abu Dhabi, or a one-off, this is my one chance to go on residential. We were talking about transferable skills earlier, and it's the reverse. It's the transfer from Outward Bound to us. And it would just be incredible for our children.
Thank you. And then just so the second bit of that, if there was then the show garden, if we're lucky enough to get it, if there was, when your kids come to Abu Dhabi in the future and we had this garden at Abu Dhabi, how do you think they would respond to that?
I think they would love it because if this happens, they would have been part of it. And they would be able to talk other people through, this is the experience that we had, this is where this was, and now we're bringing it here to you. And this person it's a bit like a person putting your words into an art piece, isn't it? And if you take the video of our children speaking about their experience, it's making a garden out of that. And the fact that they can carry those words and those experiences around with them they won't literally be carrying them, but that garden has been made from Abu Dhabi to London, and then they can see it again in Abu Dhabi, shows that for them and for their aspirations, that this is a journey that can continue, and it's a lesson that doesn't have to be a one-off, and that they can take with them to different places as they grow in life and as they become an adult.
That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thanks.